Welcome to the Thrive Careers Podcast, the show that helps you move your career confusion to career success, hosted by the extraordinary Olajumoke Fatoki. Each episode is packed with expert insights, real-life stories, and practical strategies to help you land your dream job, level up, and build a career you love. No more guesswork, just clear, actionable steps to help you thrive. If you're ready, let's jump right into it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Thrive Careers Podcast. My name is Olajumoke Fatoki, and you already know what we do here. And I'm so excited about today's conversation because it's going to be a powerful one. We're diving into breaking the cycle, healing generational trauma for personal and career success. And we're going to be exploring how addressing deeply rooted patterns can unlock opportunities for growth, both in our personal lives as well as in our professional journeys. And joining us today is Nikita, a remarkable advocate and thought leader in this space. And guess what? I'm just going to allow Nikita to introduce herself to us, and then we can take the conversation further from there. So over to you, Nikita. Let our audience meet you.
Hello, everyone. It is so exciting to be here with Ola and discussing this very important thing that is often overlooked. I'm Nikita Peck, and I am a licensed clinical social worker, licensed therapist in the U.S., over a decade now, working with people, helping them to heal their trauma, rewrite their story so that they can level up and grow. I do a lot. People laugh at me because I'm Jamaican, and they say Jamaicans do a lot. So I am a therapist. I'm trained as a doula as well and a yoga teacher. And so I use all those roles to come together to inform our practice in helping people. So that's a little bit about me. I'm really excited to chat with you guys.
Amazing stuff. Thank you for sharing with us, Nikita. We're so excited to have you. All right. So we have, there is a way that we start our show, and it's always been an icebreaker. It's kind of a fun one just to help us ease into the conversation. So let me know when you're ready and I'll shoot. All right. So this is all about career. And so we've sort of coined a career related question and make it fun. So I'd ask you, Nikita, if your career journey were to be a movie, what would the title be and why?
Oh my God. That is such a great, okay, so if my career journey were to be a movie, what would be the title? I think the title would be Coming Back to Home, like coming back home, because my career started obviously as a social worker. And I remember the reason why I got into the career was because of my grandmother. Ironically, interestingly, she was not in the field. She didn't work. She was a stay-at-home wife and mom. But her impact, the impact that she made just living, she didn't work. She lived, she served the community. And the impact that she made alone inspired me to get into the field of social work and therapy so that I can make that same impact, that she made in the community, just living. And so my career path I dealt with a lot of pivoting. I pivot to the birth world with moms and the yoga world. And essentially now I pivot back to just kind of showcasing and sharing stories around our culture and our heritage and how that informs our drive for impact, our drive for purpose. So I think that's what it would be, coming back home.
Amazing stuff. I love it. I love the historical, background that you have to it. It's very significant, and I love that. Thank you so much. Coming back home. Interesting. Thank you. All right. So now we are getting ready to move into our conversation for today. And so we're going to start on the note of, being on the same page. We want people to understand what we're talking about. So definitions, a little bit of background, and then we'll take it up from there. So let's understand generational trauma a little bit. So for those who are unfamiliar, with this term, how would you define generational trauma? And why is it important to address it?
So in my work, I've discovered that everything is interconnected. This life is just a cycle, if a fabric that's connected from the past and the past and the past. Everything informs what we do now. And so for a long time, we've looked at trauma and all these issues that we face in mental health as just your issue, like the person seeking help, just your issue. But in reality, as I've done the work, I realized that there is a huge, huge connection between how you show up in the world today and how you experience life in your early experiences. And how you experience life, it depends on how your parents experience life. So generational trauma is really looking at the connectedness of the stories, the experiences that you experience, your parents experience, their parents, and even ancestors before you have experienced. So it's really impacting to think about. There are ancestors who we do not even know of, right? We don't know them, we don't know their story, but they walked this earth. What they experienced have been stored in their bodies, and passed down every generation. Everything that you teach your kids, it's going to be passed down to descendants who you never will see. And so it is a beautiful thing because we are so connected as people, because we keep and we carry the things of our ancestors, and we will carry those things on and pass them on to descendants. So it's almost like I like to think of it like, for people who are real spiritual and they like to think of like the multi-dimensional things. It's almost like in the present, we are holding the past and the future at the same time. And so generational healing and trauma is very important, because if you don't realize that what happened in the past affects you today, you will continue that cycle. You won't know you have the power now to change the future. You have the power now to change the trajectory of your descendants in the future. And it's not just your own descendants, but the people who will come before you. So you can impact the community to impact the next generation.
Amazing, amazing stuff. So I'd like us to just break this down a little bit more further and make it even more practical. So what are some common ways that generational trauma can manifest in our lives and careers? Some people might have been seeing these patterns and they don't even know what it is. So what are those signs, those common ways that they tend to show up in our lives and our careers?
That is such a powerful question that needs to be a discussion that we have often, because we don't think about it. We just think of how we show up as just who we are. But who are we? We are us, but we are also our ancestors. And so it's important because, and how it shows up, I see a lot in foreign, being in the United States. I'm going to speak from that perspective because that's where I come from. And my family is Jamaican, Caribbean people. And luckily, I was raised in a community where it was a lot of Caribbean Americans. So it was intertwined. But a lot of times, in our foreign experiences in the US, we are shaped by stories and beliefs of our parents. The immigrant story is that you come to America for a chance, of being better. And so that often, and you have to be better, you have to be at the top, you have to. And that becomes a narrative in our psyche. And I find a lot of ambitious foreigners, whether you come from the islands, whether you come from Africa, Nigeria, whatever, we experience pressures of these stories. And so we become overachievers. We minimize the work that we are putting forth. A lot of my clients who are CEOs and ambitious people, they often never see their work as enough because of the stories that have been told. You have to be better. One of the things that Black people hear a lot is, you as a Black person, you can't be just good. You have to be better than them. And so it causes you to minimize the hard work that you're already putting in. It causes you to ignore the beauty in your work and the strength that's already there. So I see people do great things and win awards and all this stuff, but they will sit here and tell you, well, that's nothing. That's what I'm supposed to do. So it causes us to see greatness as nothing. That's not enough. So I see that a lot. And that comes from generational trauma, because we have been told these stories over and over and over again. that you got to be 10 times better. You have no room for error. And a lot of people, when we hear those stories, we don't allow ourselves to be human. And so we are hard on ourselves when we make a mistake or if we didn't shoot 100%, you know? And so that's one way that generational trauma can come up. And I always say this, you know, when it comes to the Black community here, we have to acknowledge racism. We have to acknowledge slavery. And, you know, we always look at slavery as impacting the psyche of Black people, but it also impacts the psyche of white people. So that's where you find in the workplace, you'll find micromanaging and microaggressions from white people to Black people and minority people. You find that, and that is generational trauma as well, because they didn't deal with that themselves. And they carried on those things from their ancestors. And then Black people or people of color come into those workspaces and they can respond in a different way, right? They can respond. I know you guys probably heard of the stress response that we all have, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. I was just talking to a client this week and we were talking about work and we were talking about how they shut down in certain areas, but then they fight in other areas. And in workplaces, black people or people of color or minority cultures might find themselves shutting down, right? Or avoiding because they don't know what to do. Or they might find that they fight, you know? So yeah, so those are some ways that, you know, generational trauma can just show up in the workplace.
Interesting. Very enlightening as well, because a lot of times we have been so indoctrinated into some of those things that we don't even realize them. So this is a very good call out. And I'm excited we're having this conversation. So, I mean, having given us such a background, that's one of the reasons why we are here, so that we can break some of those cycle, you know, intentionally. So, what are those steps that individuals can take to begin to heal from generational trauma?
Yes. So, number one, we have to recognize that we have just experienced 5 years ago a global trauma when we experienced COVID in the pandemic. And so that actually that was in a very pivotal time period, because right when COVID happened, we were already in this social media digital age, right? And COVID actually pushed us in isolation. It pushed us further in this digital age, which continued to create isolation. The first thing we need to do is we have to get into communities. We have to build communities and support. We have to reconnect interpersonally. As a therapist, I don't see us finding a solution without community, without getting back to connecting with people, you know, connecting with yourselves and connecting with your own stories, like really going back to looking at your parents or their parents, looking at their stories, their experiencing, and taking parts of them with you. That's really what propels us to purpose. Another thing is going back to rest. Rest is a resistance these days. People of color, for some reason, because of our traumas, we don't know how to rest. And that is probably the most important thing, because if you look back in slavery times, what did they do to our people? They worked us until we dropped dead. So that was a generational trauma for people of color to believe that rest means you're not productive. Rest does not feel safe. So let me break down really quick our nervous system, okay? So our nervous system is there for us to be aware of a threat, right? It's there just in case you're in the woods, right? And a bear comes, your nervous system, your stress response kicks in, your heart starts racing, your pupil dilate, so that you know to run or fight or freeze so that you survive, okay? But that continues today. That continues to keep us alive today. However, our nervous system hasn't evolved well yet. It doesn't know the difference in a bear and something, just perceived threat. And so our nervous system reacts the same way. So when we as people perceive rest as unsafe, we almost perceive rest as a threat. And so our nervous system reacts that way with anxiety, with overthinking, with worry, with chest pains. Oh my God, I'm not doing enough. I think the number one thing is we need to start to embrace rest. And rest is not just going to sleep. Rest is to stop, turn off that computer at 5 o'clock, setting boundaries, setting realistic boundaries in the week. If it's, I'm not taking work home, or if I'm cutting off work at 5 o'clock, or on Sundays, I'm not doing any work. I'll leave work on the Saturdays, and Sundays I'm not. We have to set boundaries around our time and our energies. We just have to. Another thing, because this is a nervous system thing, this isn't just in our heads like our parents have told us, right? Oh, you're depressed, you're anxious, get over it. It's not that. It's not that simple. This is our actual bodily nervous system reacting. So when you're feeling stressed, your body is literally feeling that. It's not in your head. I just want everybody to know that, right? So I'm going to give you guys a tool to take with you if you haven't heard it yet. It's called a grounding exercise, okay? So you are going to tap into your 5 senses, okay? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to stop and you're going to look around and you're going to look at for 5 things that you see with your eyes. Now, when you do this, you're using your sense of vision, and that is helping you stay present in the moment, right? So you're going to look at maybe the tree, but you're not just going to look at the tree and say, oh, just a tree. You're going to look at the tree as if you're an alien from outer space and you've never seen a tree before. And this is your first time seeing a tree, and you're going to study the tree. You're going to look at the colors. You're going to look at the texture. The next thing you're going to do is find 4 things that you can hear. Okay. So maybe it's the cars. You're going to listen to the sound as if you've never heard that sound before. You're going to listen to for the birds. You're going to listen to it for water. You're going to listen to this. Then you're going to find 3 things that you can smell, right? You're going to find 2 things that you can touch, and you're going to find 1 thing you can taste. So you're going to utilize your senses to bring you back in the present moment. Okay. I would say the next thing you want to do, obviously, go work with a therapist so that you can start to discover the patterns, the stories that you have been told or you have developed over time so that you can reprogram those beliefs about yourself. I love working. One of my favorite things to do with clients is work on their core beliefs. Like, what do you believe about yourself? And a lot of clients will be like, I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. This is not good enough. I need to work harder. And if you have those beliefs, you will never be satisfied because you'll constantly work. And so you want to work with someone to reshape these beliefs. But if you want to, if you don't want to go to therapy, what you can do is you can journal often and start to rewrite these stories. I am this. I can this. And it sounds so basic and elementary, but it's such a powerful, powerful tool. Okay. So we want to rewrite our stories, embrace rest, right? We want to ground ourselves, and we want to connect with people, connect with community.
So impactful. So impactful. I loved each point, reconnecting with ourselves, work with people who can also help us, to uncover some of these things, because so many of them are so deep seated that we are not even aware. Sometimes you took like 5 questions in one. Because I was going to ask you, to share if there are tools, that people can use, and you already spoke to that, and that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I loved how you also incorporated the use of our 5 senses. That is truly phenomenal, and how we can bring ourselves back into the moment using that. I think that is really critical. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. All right. Thank you, Nikita. So we'll move now to the next question. Like I said, you already skipped, a few questions. So I'm just going to move to the next one. So now drilling it down to the audience that we are speaking with, who are mostly professionals. And at every point, you'll be saying things that everyone, can pick 1 or 2 things from, but let's just drill it down a bit more. So how can addressing generational trauma help professionals overcome workplace challenges like imposter syndrome or fear of failure?
That's definitely important. I think the workplace culture needs to talk about trauma. I think we've mistakenly believed that trauma is just personal life and work and you're a robot. It doesn't exist like that. We are intertwined. We're still a human being. and your trauma, how you were raised, how you believe is going to show up in the workplace. So understanding that will definitely help you rewrite the story. Um, Again, like that idea of fear of failure, that imposter syndrome comes from your belief, your core beliefs about yourself and others. So I know I've worked with a lot of people who may deep down inside the narrative they received maybe as a child or from society, because generational trauma doesn't just come from your parents, it comes from what society says, right? Your beliefs come from society. And so I know a lot of clients who would believe, core belief is that maybe a person, a white person is more qualified than them, right? And so they will feel intimidated and they will feel, they wouldn't even try because they already feel like I'm an imposter or I'm going to fail. So, understanding where your story comes from, where this story comes from, whether it's your parents, whether it's society, whether you grew up, even in the United States, like people who grew up in the South have a different experience than people who grew up in the North, like New York and stuff. And so knowing what your community, the stories of your community is important into releasing that. And so, again, when you rewrite your story, you are rewriting the trajectory of your careers, because when you go from something like I am a failure to I can do whatever I put my mind to. And I know as kids, we hear that, right? You always hear that. It's so funny. You always hear that as a kid. You can do whatever you put your mind to. But do we really believe that? Was that really something that society instilled in us, or was it just empty words? And so being honest about what you believe, I know sometimes it can be a vulnerable thing to admit and say, this is my core belief. This is what I believe about myself. I've had many clients who I would ask the question like, how do you feel about yourself? And they will break down crying because deep down inside, they don't feel good about themselves. They don't think highly of themselves. And there's a lot of driven people in this world who are CEOs and running stuff that don't feel good about themselves. And I think it's about being vulnerable. Vulnerability. So Brene Brown, she's a great social worker and researcher as well. She really talks about vulnerability, and she talks about it on a large scale, but she actually talks about it in leadership. And she talks about how vulnerability is the key to courage. Like you have to be vulnerable. You have to be honest in order to be a courageous and brave leader, because it's just impossible. Without vulnerability, there's no connection. And when you're trying to lead people, you have to connect. There's no way around it. Or you can just be a micromanager who no one likes. And that kind of leader or that kind of person, no one wants to follow you. No one wants to work with you because you're not really connecting. Connection is not just in the family, we're connecting, or schools, we're connecting. You have to have connection in the workplace. And if you have a bunch of people who are not aware of their trauma, not aware of how these traumas are passed down, then collectively we can't make changes. So we have to understand that from a collective perspective. Um Side note, I know that some of us know that TikTok was banned for like a day. And then that day was actually very powerful for a lot of people. Why? Because a lot of people transitioned to another app called Red Note. I think it's called Shuahongshu in Mandarin. And so all these Americans flocked to this app and were culture shocked from an app. They didn't go to China. We went to an app and we were in culture shock because we were like, why are all these people so nice and welcoming us? What the heck? What is that? Everybody was like, welcome TikTok refugees, welcome Americans. And people were just so shocked at this. And we had a lot of dialogue with the Chinese people over this app. And what we realized is like places like China and all these other places have a collective perspective on like community. Here in America and other Western cultures, we have an individualistic perspective. And so we're isolated. And that fuels loneliness, that fuels distance. And we need to go back to generations where we were more in a collective form. So I feel like generational healing comes from looking at multiple things, looking at our stories, looking at our personal stories, being vulnerable and honest with ourselves. And also for the leaders to get to a point where they're honest and vulnerable and truthful so that there can be trust in the workplace. So it's a lot. It's a lot that we can do, you know.
It's a lot, actually. It's a lot. And again, you sort of covered my follow-up question, which is like, do leaders or employers have any role to play to actually support individuals, who are walking through some of these challenges? So, you
Yes.
covered that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you didn't.
Sorry, Ola. I'm over here talking about all your I'm just saying all of the answers. Yes, leaders are very important in helping facilitate this. As a matter of fact, I do see a rise in like therapists like myself. I have a consulting business in order to help leaders understand emotional intelligence, right? Understand the effects of burnout. Because what's happening now, we're seeing more and more that leaders are understanding the cost of employee burnout. When employees don't want to work, when they're leaving, there is a cost to your business. And so they're taking more time to invest into that, into their employees' health. And so I think leaders need to lead by example. Leaders have to be more vulnerable and not getting, and again, going back to generational trauma, right? Generational patterns. I think a lot of people get into these leadership positions in order to fulfill something that's missing rather than looking at the impact that they actually want to make. So if you get into a leadership role and your whole your whole aim is to feel powerful, then you have some work to do. Because you don't get into a leadership role just to feel powerful, because guess what you're going to do? You're going to feel powerful and make everyone else feel inferior or feel less powerful. You get into a leadership role because you see a vision in that company, you align with that vision, you have a mission, and your desire is to see impact.
Amazing. Amazing stuff. Thank you. Again, still on that question, do you think that there are specific things that employers should be doing to create that environment, for their workers? Are there specific things that you've seen in your own experience? Are there tools that organizations can put in place, to support and to even create awareness about some of these things?
Yeah. So I've been a social worker my whole career. And social workers are probably one of the most overworked and underpaid careers there can be. And so I've watched my own experience as a social worker being burned out. Like we've had caseloads of 100, 200 people that we had to see every month. How do you see 200 people every month? I don't know. I think the problem in a lot of workplaces is that the decision makers are not those who've experienced what it is to be the frontline workers. That is a huge issue. There is a huge disconnect. I think number one, they need to have people in leadership who've actually walked the walk, or who actually cares about the work and the experience and the environment of the workers or the frontline people. So I would say we need to shift leadership around. We need to have a diverse leadership culture, right? In the company. When you see a company and there's no person of color, there's no women leaders, that is a problem, because how do you have different perspectives? If you have leaders who are all the same cultural background, the same everything, you cannot make decisions that are helpful for the collective people. You are going to make decisions that is just from your perspective. You're not going to understand the perspective of other people. And so I think they need to diversify leadership for sure. The leadership has to also be aware of the actual work, like know what that work is like. I don't know if you guys remember the show Undercover Boss, but it's about, if for those who don't know, it's about like bosses, like CEOs or whatever, deciding to come in as an undercover employee, and they come in as like the dishwasher or the server, right? They're the CEO, but they come in and they do the work and they see what it's like, how the leadership in that area is treating the employees, and they get full insight. I think leaders need to get down and dirty, like the front line workers as well, so they know what it's like and not just making a decision from up the ladder, because those decisions, and as a social worker, I've seen it for years. It's very disconnected. It makes no sense because you don't know what it's like down here. You don't know what it's like in this role. You don't know the issues we face. You're just making theoretical decisions. You're not making practical decisions. So that's one thing.
That's amazing. And I think that's a really good place, to land this place. But I have one last question that I would just like you to quickly address, then we'll get into the rapid fire question. What are some signs that someone may need to address deeper issues impacting their career? How do you know that, you have deeper issues that are impacting your career? What are those signs that once you begin to see them, you know that you need to address them?
Oh, so I'm going to speak again from a mental health perspective, maybe signs and things that I hear a lot of. I work a lot with corporate folks who, high achievers, like they've always kind of done it. I would say some signs is, number one, you feeling overwhelmed. You're feeling overwhelmed and it's starting to feel really hard. Even if you're just feeling a little overwhelmed, I think the key is prevention. The key is dealing with it early. Don't wait. Hear me, guys. Do not wait until you're absolutely burnt out to get help and support. I would actually say if you start to feel overwhelmed, notice what is the story that you hear? What is the belief? Do you hear the belief of, well, I'm not really doing that much anyway. I got to work harder. I think if you're noticing you're starting to be overwhelmed, but your belief is saying, but I got to still work hard, I think it's worth challenging that, maybe, going to therapy or whatever the case may be. I think that's number one. Number two is if you're starting to feel physical, like a lot of people these days are feeling physical anxiety symptoms. People are nauseous, they're sick, they're dizzy, they can't focus. Those are not things that you can just get over. They will get worse. So don't take stress lightly because we've done that too long. We think, oh, when I'm overthinking, it's whatever, I just need to manage it. No, you need an intervention. You need balance. You need boundaries. When you start noticing that you cannot put work down, if you are noticing that you're constantly working and never getting to a point where you can feel comfortable putting work down, it's time to recognize that there are some deeper issues there. um, and if you're having conflict if you don't feel safe, and I don't mean just physically safe, but like if you don't feel emotionally safe in your work environment, like with your supervisor or with your team members, I think that's a sign to get support and help as well.
Awesome. Truly awesome. Thank you so much for calling those out. I know that will be very helpful to all our listeners. When you start to feel overwhelmed, it's a huge sign that there's something deeper that you need to work on. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. So we finally come to the end of this round, and we have one final question for you. As a rapid fire question. It's a fun one, so just feel free and just share with us. And it's usually three, but I decided to just give you one that I think is all encompassing. So are you ready?
Yeah.
So if you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Wow. I think of this a lot. My younger self, I think it depends on what younger self. I'll give you a number of perspectives. So my younger self, maybe like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like maybe young childhood, I would tell her that it's okay to be human. It's okay to make mistakes, and mistakes does not mean that something's wrong with you. If it's my teenage self, I would say it's okay to be you. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or say. I know that sounds cliche, but it doesn't matter what your classmates are saying or doing. What matters is what you want to do and what you like. My younger career self, I would definitely, the advice I would give her is to invest more. Invest. Focus on investments.
Invest more.
Yeah, I would say invest, look into investments like real estate investments and stuff like that. Invest in travel experiences more because work is going to be there. Your career, you made it. You made it. You already in your career. I got into my career at 22 years old. I'm 34 now. And so I'd have been like, girl, you made it. I mean, no one can take this from you. So travel more, travel and experience things more.
Yeah, you should visit Nigeria.
That's my look. I have a lot of friends in Nigeria. I have friends who are in I want to visit.
Oh, please do. Nice. All right. So thank you so much, Nikita. Today's discussion has been very heartfelt and, a timely reminder that breaking generational circle of trauma is not just about healing. It's actually about creating a legacy of growth, resilience, and success. Because if you don't deal with some of these, past issues that tends to show up in our current lives, then we cannot really, claim the future, or we cannot really take hold of the future. So it's very important that we are able to settle the past so that we can be confident in the moment and we can also aspire for the future. Thank you so much. So thank you for sharing your wealth of wisdom with us. But before we go, where can our listeners connect with you and how can they learn more about your work?
Sure. So, listeners, you can follow me on LinkedIn. Find me at Nikita Pekin. I think I might be the only one there. But also connect with me on YouTube, and on my YouTube channel, they can find me on LinkedIn, Nikita Pekin. I think I'm the only Nikita Pekin there. And they can follow me and subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Nikita Christina Speak.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We've really enjoyed, this conversation with you. Something I myself would love to listen again, and be able to put to practice. Thank you so much. So do you have any final words to say as we close on this episode?
Thank you so much, Ola, for having me here. I think what you're doing is great. And, just for the listeners to continue to realize and reconnect to your story, your purpose, your mission. And don't be afraid to choose an environment, a work environment that aligns with that. And that's what I'm all about.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. Do not be afraid to choose the kind of environment, that aligns with who you are. Thank you so much. And I think that's a wrap on this session.
Love it. I love it. Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
And that's it for today's episode of Thrive Careers Podcast. I am Olajumoke Fatoki, reminding you that no matter where you are in your career, you have the power to rewrite your story. If you've enjoyed today's insights, do not forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to thrive. If you have questions or topics you'd like for me to cover, let's connect. I would love to hear from you. Remember, clarity creates confidence, and confidence leads to success. And until I come your way again next time, stay inspired and keep thriving.